I am with Mr. Novak Perovic, the former president of the South African Fencing Federation, vice president of the African Confederation, and a member of the Executive Committee of the FIE, my dear friend and my colleague. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Novak Perovic. How did you get involved in the sport of fencing?
How I got involved in sport of fencing. My son, when he was cadet, started fencing, and through his cadets and juniors and seniors career, I was involved. Then I was asked to join management, and that is the story. But that is not the beginning of my sport career, because I was very much involved in sport management back in Yugoslavia. Not in fencing, but sport is science. So once you learn it, and I have postgraduate studies in the management of sports, so at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which sport you have to manage. You have to know what to do.
And what was your sport in Yugoslavia? Well, I know that you were involved in a few, but your primary sport?
Yeah, primary sport was basketball.
Okay.
Unfortunately, very early I was injured and out and very depressed. And then my coach actually advised me to carry on being involved on a management level. Initially, I didn't understand what he is talking about, but once I started, I was sucked in and just carried on for next 45 years.
As you still are.
And I'm still trying, yes.
Give me some of the roles you've played within both your federation, the International Federation, as well as within the African Confederation.
Well, I started as a member of the board of the Provincial Fencing Association here in Gauteng in South Africa. About 8 years ago, I became vice president of the African Confederation, and still I am. And then 5 years ago, I became member of the Executive Committee together with you. So that is plus minus time when we started working together.
We've had an opportunity to do a little travel together. We've done 2 evaluations, one for Angola, the other for Pakistan. Just give me a quick synopsis of what you think from the standpoint of what those observations, what we're seeing, and where we're going.
Well, in both countries, we came across with a very enthusiastic people involved in management and all that of the local federations, with support of national Olympic committees, but obviously without any experience with fencing and proper development of fencing. So, but we came to the conclusion to propose that these federations should become members of the FIE, hoping that then some proper projects will be applied and some proper development will happen. Problem is that I don't want to use numbers, but out of 150 members of the FIE, not all the countries actually have fencing, and that is something that we must try to stop introducing new countries without making sure that we develop countries in fencing in these countries.
Can you give us an idea of what kinds of things do we need to put in place to support these federations? In your mind, it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list, but we've talked a little bit about it. Just give me your thoughts as far as what we've discussed.
Well, I think the main problem that we came across with is that for instance, these 2 countries had no qualified coaches. And even people that are practicing fencing are not trained to do the basic techniques. It was actually amazing to see how much effort everybody is putting going nowhere. Basic techniques were missing, basic way of holding weapons, hold positions and everything. It was, I think once I said, from YouTube you can learn a lot, but you can't learn to fence on a proper level.
It's interesting how, in Angola, the level was lower, but it was also children. But they had better technique than the level in Lahore, where they literally had no one who'd ever really been properly trained. And when you said that, I just thought about that contrast of the difference in having just basic technique.
Well, don't forget that there were two men in Angola who were at the academy, military academy in Portugal, and who were involved in fencing in Portugal. They were not qualified coaches, but at least they practiced a couple of times for themselves in a proper way. So they learned some basics. When you start from zero, then very quickly you get somewhere, but that somewhere is actually nowhere unless you apply science and proper education.
That science and education includes not just the science and the technology or the technique of fencing, but then we also talk about the education and the management of running a sports organization, which is also something that we've talked about needing. What types of things do you think we'll be able to do from the standpoint of getting the business side up and running for these organizations?
It's difficult to point out few items that has to be introduced. If I look at your question from my continent point of view, I can come back with the question, which African fencing federation has proper management?
Who are the top federations in Africa? And let's talk about their management, and then let's talk about the results, and then what else we need to do.
Well, if you ask me, first of all, from results point of view, top African nations are Egypt, by far, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, Senegal, and South Africa. Where, when I say Egypt and Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria, they obviously have a couple of fencers with Olympic medals that are very strong at world level, because it is not only product of their perfect management, but also the fact that these fencers live overseas. They live in Europe. Most probably the best organized and the strongest federation with best management is Egypt. They have support from their government. They have even their building and premises and permanently employed staff. So they are, as far as I'm concerned, the only properly functioning federation in Africa.
Do any of the other, like Tunisia, Senegal, Morocco, Algeria, do they have any paid staff?
Difficult to say. Yes, I think that Algeria does have some paid staff, and they have also facilities, but that is not totally in function with the product. There are no fences corresponding to the facilities, so I don't know how to say, but they have strong federation, but they don't have strong fencing.
Who are the up-and-coming countries right now, would you say? Both in the African Confederation, but also when you look around the world right now.
I made quite a decent analysis of the last World Championship. I must say that results are not surprising. Best results come from the same countries years and years again.
The usual suspects, Russia, Italy, France.
Usual suspect, exactly. Most probably the strongest results currently are with Russian fencing, but USA also had a couple of medals. France, Hungary, obviously Korea. China was quite surprisingly with the low results. Germany as well, I was expecting much more, but it didn't come. But generally, the leading Italy, I almost forgot Italy. Italy had great
the second, the one and twos of the world right now.
Yeah. But generally, I don't Maybe there are a couple of individuals from different other countries doing good results, but I don't see any national federation coming up quickly, like maybe Korea and Japan came, and even China came in last 10 years, strongly up.
I think the other side of that is they had the economic power behind them, the resources to be able to make that happen.
It is a famous question, what comes first, chicken or egg? Once you establish and properly manage your federation, and then you can find your place in a national sport management level and get support from NOC, from Department of Sport, and so on. If you are just a couple of volunteers trying to do something that they don't know actually what they do, no program, no target, nobody will put money.
In Africa, first of all, congratulations again for getting one of the two academies. Let's talk about the academies and what's on the horizon as far as what it's going to take to really develop fencing on the continent.
As you know, from this year we have two academies in Africa, one in Algiers, which is French-speaking, and here in South Africa for English-speaking students. I have to say that I was 2 years ago badly surprised when I realized that I'm sending my students into academy in Dakar, where everything was in French, and my students didn't know a single word, meaning that it was waste of time and money. So that was where our initiative came out to actually split and to have two academies. I have to point out that out of 31 African countries, only 8 are English-speaking. The rest are French-speaking, where obviously Arabic countries, except Egypt, are also French-speaking. So, on the other hand, we have a couple of strong sport nations here in Africa, like Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Zambia, Kenya, that are not members. They don't have fencing at all. So that is in my second target, to improve currently existing 8 countries and to try to bring some more English-speaking countries to participate in this academy.
So right now, the total number of federations in Africa is 31. 8 are English-speaking. The ones you're talking about are really sub-Saharan, down in the southern part of Africa. What is preventing them from, do you think, embracing fencing as a new sport in their countries?
There was no fencing before, so obviously there is no tradition, and that is a new sport that has to be developed from scratch. It's not that anything is preventing, but fencing wasn't present in these countries ever.
Basically, it's planting new seeds that have never been planted before.
Yes. Well, the fact that most of the French-speaking countries have fencing is not surprise, because obviously France was bringing fencing in their colonies. That is something that we have to understand and accept.
With regards to the academy in South Africa, how's it going, first of all?
Well, as you know, we have support for 8 students, so we selected 8 countries. Currently, we are in a headache procedure to get study permits for all 8 students. It's not easy because of all these political issues. Even our student from Nigeria was rejected.
Really?
So now I had a meeting with the Department of Home Affairs, and they asked me to submit additional documents and proof that everything will be paid, that we have to pay for him everything before they reconsider this decision. You have to have in mind that illegal migration and immigration is a huge problem in Africa, and Nigerians are on top of the list. I just wanted to say they were not granted visas to come to World Championship in Germany.
Oh, wow. Well, they let him come to Dubai, but that was just one person. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's different story.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would emigrate to Dubai illegally.
Yeah, that would be a hardship for sure.
Yeah.
So currently, how many candidates do you have, and where are they from?
I have 8 candidates, one from South Africa, Botswana, Angola, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Ghana, and Uganda.
A lot of the new federations are sending coaches to try to start developing them.
Yes. Well, if you remember, we are introducing independent college program and plus fencing coaching program, because in 10 months, people coming to the academy, they never fenced in their life, but most of them never were involved in sports management. So through the college program, we will try to educate them to the certain level for the management in sport, academic level, and plus on a specialized program to teach them to coach fencing.
Okay. What's next as far as the FIE and going forward? What do you see going into Tokyo 2020?
First of all, we have to make sure that we have successful competition like we did in Rio and in London. We are having new medals, which is fantastic, 2 new medals. Obviously, commercial aspect of sport is taking over Olympic Games, so we have to be sure that we are market subject that somebody wants to buy. So I'm sure that FIE has to put big efforts to make products that everybody will gladly buy and put money in. I don't expect that we will have any spectacular results. Maybe 1-2 medal will go somewhere where it wasn't expected. But generally, leading fencing nations will carry on taking all the cream.
Well, you never know. London was a surprise with China and Egypt and Japan showing up.
Yeah, China and Japan are now part of the top fencing nations. Korea as well.
A surprise would be maybe Hong Kong, Thailand, Vietnam, Romania wouldn't be a surprise. Yeah, something like that.
But they won't take 17 medals. Two will go to some Hong Kong.
Yeah, right. One would be good.
I am trying to do something on a different level here in my Africa. So Olympic medals are not really my target at this stage.
How can we support you in your endeavors in your Africa?
Let me put it this way. For instance, most of the Southern African countries don't have fencing. We have here next door Botswana, where we developed 2-3 years ago, initially developed fencing. And there is some very low-level fencing in Namibia. So generally, we can't organize international competition. And that is something that is my primary target, to try to develop Southern African countries to the level where we can compete between each other, where we can give opportunity to all of the fencers in that region to have at least 10 competitions a year. Because we don't have money to travel to Europe, where you have 52 competitions a year. So we have to try to organize ourselves locally. And then same target is for the Northern African and Western African countries, where most of the countries have some fencing. But there are no international competitions. Many of them don't have even national competition.
National, regional, and then international, basically building up.
Eventually, when you come with the quality to go somewhere, because I know we send our juniors and cadets to the World Championship and they are out first day. So what is the purpose? First of all, big expense. Second, no results, quite depressive. These youngsters don't like to be just knocked out first day.
Yeah, they don't need to get knocked out first day. That's bad for their ego. Bad for their morale.
Very often that even takes these youngsters to the situation to stop fencing, because they realize that fact that they are national champions means nothing in the world. That is something that somehow we have to do.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Swordsport Podcast. The Swordsport Podcast is a production of Swordsport.tv and is produced and engineered by myself, Don Anthony, and Rick Lotzenheiser. We would like to give a special thank you to the King Arts Complex and their CEO, Demetrius Neely, for providing us a great space to work from in Columbus, Ohio. To subscribe to the Swordsport Podcast, check us out on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube.